Hi, I'm Pasquale, and this presentation is about our paper, Adaptive Perturbation-Based Gradient Estimation for Discrete Latent Variable Models. This work is done in collaboration with Mathias and Luca. So, why do we care about learning discrete representations in neural models? One reason is that we may want to incorporate, for example, a planning algorithm in our model to make it able to solve complex tasks that require some degree of planning or reasoning. Another reason is that we may want to incorporate a discrete probability distribution in our model, for example, to make it more explainable. One motivating example is learning to plan. In this setting, the input is a map. Then the model assigns a continuous weight to each cell in this map. Then those weights are fed into a shortest path algorithm, which produces a discrete path, which is then provided to the user. And the question is, how do we backpropagate through this discrete component here that, given the input weights, generates the path? Another example is learning to explain. Here we have an input text containing, for example, a review. We feed the review to a neural net, which assigns an importance weight to all of the words in the review. And then, based on those importance weights, we select the most k important words, and only based on these selected words, predict the rating of that review. And the problem is, how do we backpropagate through this discrete selection step here? In general, the problem we tackle in this work is the following. How do we backpropagate through a combinatorial solver? A combinatorial solver is a function that, given some input weights theta, for example, representing some edge weights in a graph, gives us a discrete solution z, for example, representing a shortest path. And it does so by returning the solution z from the set of feasible solutions C that maximizes some score function. And this score function is linear. This is the dot product between the input weights theta and the candidate solution z. The solve function can be many different things, such as a top k function, a shortest path algorithm, a maximum spanning tree algorithm, and so on. So this is the general problem we're trying to solve. We receive an input x. Using a neural model, we compute some weights theta. Then we feed those weights theta into a combinatorial solver, and we get a discrete solution z. Then we feed the solution z to a downstream model that produces a prediction. And then we compute a loss, which measures how good this prediction is. And the problem is, how do we estimate the gradient of the loss with respect to the input weights theta so that we can backpropagate through the combinatorial solver? Implicit MLE is a recent solution to this problem. Without going too much into details, implicit MLE is based on the observation that invoking a combinatorial solver on some input weights theta to obtain a discrete solution z is equivalent to computing the maximum a posteriori, or MAP for short, state for a distribution P over all the possible solutions parameterized by theta. And this is an exponential family distribution for which we know how to compute maximum likelihood gradients. Note that this distribution is not constructed explicitly by AIMLE, but AIMLE draws samples from this distribution by using Perturb-and-Map. Implicit MLE works as follows. We first take the input x, and using a neural net, we compute the weights theta. Then we sample from this distribution P associated with the solver using Perturb-and-Map. And we get discrete solution z sampled from P. Then Z is provided to a downstream model, which uses it to generate a prediction. And the prediction is used to compute a loss value. Then we construct a so-called target distribution by taking the input weights theta and perturbing them using the gradient of the loss with respect to the solution Z, obtaining some new distribution parameters theta prime. And we can estimate the gradient of the loss with respect to the input weights theta by using the difference between the solution Z sampled from P, parameterized by theta, and the solution generated from the target distribution, parameterized by theta prime. One crucial step in this process is constructing the target distribution using the downstream gradient information, because we need to select a perturbation size lambda. And the question is, how do we select this perturbation size lambda? If lambda is close to 0, the solutions obtained using theta and theta prime will be the same, which causes the gradient estimate to be 0. On the other hand, if lambda is too big, the gradient estimates will be highly biased. And the question is there a way we can automatically select lambda during training? And here we can see that the gradient estimator is quite sensitive to the choice of lambda. For example, if the perturbation size lambda is close to 0, the gradient is very sparse, because the solutions obtained using theta and theta prime will tend to be the same. This is the cosine similarity between the estimated gradient and the true gradient, and this is the degree of sparsity of the gradient estimate. And we can see that if lambda is close to 0, the gradient is very sparse and very dissimilar from the true gradient. If lambda is too high, the gradient estimates will tend to be very biased. So, in a nutshell, lambda needs to be small but not too small, and this is very problem dependent. There's no lambda fits all solution to this. In this work, we propose a simple and very effective solution to adaptively select lambda during training. We first initialize lambda to 0, and so our gradient estimates will be 0 at the beginning. And then, during training, we adaptively change lambda until the gradient estimates satisfy some desired sparsity criteria. For example, if the expected sparsity degree of the gradient is too high, we increase lambda, and we decrease it if the gradient is too dense. Also, in this work, we note that there's a relationship between implicit MLE and the forward finite difference approximations of the gradient, and propose a variant of AIMLE based on central differences, where we perturb both terms of the gradient estimates rather than just the second term. We analyzed the bias and variance of this adaptive version of implicit MLE on synthetic experiments and found that the gradient estimates are significantly less biased than the other methods we use in the comparisons, for example, compared to the original AIMLE or the straight-to estimator. And we also found that the adaptive version of AIMLE provides results comparable to carefully tuning the perturbation size lambda without, of course, having to manually tune lambda, for example, by using cross-validation. Then we consider the task of predicting the sentiment of a review with respect to a given aspect. Here, a neural model first assigns importance weights to the words in a review. Then a discrete component selects the words with the highest importance scores. And then another neural model predicts the rating only based on the selected words. And we can see that adaptive IMLE across all the considered aspects and number of selected words provides comparable results to AIMLE when predicting the score of a review, and a better subset precision results when the selected words are compared with the words selected by human annotators. Then we considered the task of training discrete variational autoencoders, finding that adaptive IMLE produces significantly lower test reconstruction losses compared to the original IMLE, and, for example, compared to straight-through estimation. And then we considered the task named Neural Relational Inference, where the model needs to predict the evolution of a cloud of particles based on a latent tree structured graph, modeling the interactions between such particles. Finding that also on this task, adaptive IMLE produces more accurate predictions than implicit IMLE, and also compared, for example, to hard stochastic softmax tricks. So, to summarize, implicit IMLE is an approach to backpropagate through arbitrary combinatorial solvers, but this approach is heavily dependent on a hyperparameter lambda that determines the perturbation size on the choice of the target distribution. In this work, we propose adaptive IMLE, a method for automatically selecting lambda during training. Adaptive IMLE is very off the shelf, and you can turn any combinatorial solver into a neural network layer by just adding a simple decorator to the code. If you have any questions or comments, please reach out to us.